All right, let's kick this off with a really big idea. For as long as we've been, well, us, we've been running on two completely different operating systems at the same time. Think of it like this. The first is the engine of structure. This is the part of us that built the world. It's all about the how we build cities, how we record history, how we create systems. And then there's the other engine, the engine of intuition. This is the part that dreams of a world. It's the engine of why we connect with each other, why we feel wonder, why we're even here at all. Now, for literally 10,000 years, these two engines have been running on separate tracks, each one kind of incomplete without the other. One built this massive logical shell of recorded knowledge. The other kept this living, breathing, intuitive heart alive, but hidden deep inside. So, this season, we're diving into the story of their long, often messy, and sometimes violent journey back toward each other. And this part of the story, this is about the first time that Heart, after centuries of being pushed aside and silenced, finally found a way to shout. This, right here, is the first ignition. To really get what happened here, we have to start with a question that, on the surface, makes absolutely no sense. I mean, think about it. After World War II, America builds this society with more wealth, more stability, more comfort than ever before. So why on earth did the kids who grew up with all of that declare total cultural war on it? Well, it's because they were born in the shadow of the shell's greatest and, frankly, its most terrifying achievements. You see, the exact same calculating, logical brain that gave them suburban comfort and TV dinners also gave the world the atomic bomb. So this whole generation grew up in a world of really rigid conformity, but they were also haunted by this constant low-grade fear of being wiped out in a flash. They had everything the shell could possibly offer them materially, but they felt this deep spiritual emptiness, a sense that the whole system was just hollow. The heart was starving. And so something had to give. That quiet, intuitive wisdom, the heart, which had been whispering for centuries in the margins through art and philosophy, it started to find a new voice, a much, much louder one. And look, this wasn't just one single event. It was more like a chain reaction, a cultural fire that just kept spreading. It really kicked off in the 50s with the Beat generation, who were just tearing down conformity with poetry and jazz. That current then flowed right into the early 60s folk revival, which gave the whole thing a political conscience. Then boom, the British invasion comes along and puts it on turbo, creating this global youth culture. And it all kind of culminates in the wild inner exploration of psychedelia. Now, what's so cool here is to think of these as the actual tools the heart was using. What were its weapons? Well, the Beats used this raw, spontaneous poetry to just crack the polished, perfect veneer of the 1950s. Folk music basically weaponized the story song to fight for civil rights and to protest the war. Rock and roll, that built a global tribe, an entire generation with its own shared identity. And finally, psychedelia tried to turn music into a kind of technology for exploring the one place the shell couldn't possibly map, your own mind. This famous line really became the mantra for that final psychedelic stage. It wasn't just about protesting anymore. It was basically a call to unplug from the shell's entire operating system. Turn on to this new level of awareness, tune in to the frequency of this new culture, and drop out of that whole mainstream rat race for a bigger house and a nicer car. And the ultimate goal of all this dropping out was something the ancients had a word for: gnosis. Now, it's a fancy word, but the idea is actually pretty simple. This is not knowledge you get from a textbook or a lecture. No, this is direct, personal, experienced truth. It's the native language of the heart. And the counterculture, well, they believed that certain experiences could be a shortcut to this kind of knowing, a way to see a deeper reality for yourself. You know, when you start looking at it this way, the whole movement just snaps into focus. It was acting like a massive, modern-day version of an ancient mystery cult. It rejected the official state religion of materialism and offered its own path to salvation, which was personal liberation. The rock albums, those were its gospels. The festivals, they were its high holidays. And the community itself, that was the Woodstock Nation. So how do you think the shell, the establishment, the system reacted to millions of its own children suddenly converting to a new religion? Let's just say, not well. It was a mix of absolute confusion, fear, and just outright hostility. So the shell's first line of defense was to try and control the story. The media created this caricature, the hippie, which basically let the mainstream write off the entire movement. By just focusing on the long hair and the clothes, they could completely ignore the very serious philosophical critique of war, racism, and consumer culture that was actually driving the whole thing. The political establishment, though, they saw it in much more serious terms. To them, this wasn't just a bunch of kids having a good time. It was a direct threat to the social fabric of the country. And that fear, that's what fueled a rise of law and order politicians like Richard Nixon, and it led to government programs like COINTELPRO, which were designed specifically to infiltrate and disrupt these protest groups. And all of this just set the stage for a massive confrontation. It was the shell's logic of order and control smashed right up against the heart's demand for freedom and connection, a head-on collision between two totally incompatible ways of seeing the world. And the final battlefield for this clash of powers, of all places, was a muddy dairy farm in upstate New York. The organizers of the Woodstock Festival, they were planning for maybe 200,000 people. Instead, this is how many showed up: 400,000. Now, from the Shell's point of view, Woodstock was a complete disaster. The fences came down, the tickets were totally useless. It basically became a free city of nearly 500,000 people overnight. But from the Heart's perspective, this was its single greatest triumph. For 3 straight days, with hardly any food or shelter in the pouring rain, a population bigger than a lot of American cities governed itself with this incredible sense of peace and community. It was proof that the Heart's ideals weren't just some fantasy. They could actually work, even on a massive scale. And this moment right here, this perfectly captures the climax of that entire clash. When Jimi Hendrix played the national anthem, he took the Shell's ultimate symbol of patriotism, but he played it using the Heart's tools: feedback, distortion, the sounds of bombs falling, and people screaming. It wasn't disrespectful. It was this painful, honest, and deeply patriotic conversation about what America really was and what it could be. It was, quite literally, the sound of the two engines colliding. Of course, the festival ended, the hippies went home, but the world wasn't the same. You just can't put that genie back in the bottle. The ignition had caused a permanent shift in the cultural landscape. So what's the big takeaway here? It's this. For centuries, the illogical Shell had been able to just ignore or dismiss or even pathologize the intuitive heart. But the counterculture grew so huge, so loud, and so undeniably powerful that for the first time, the Shell was actually forced to listen. It couldn't understand the feeling, not at all, but it could no longer deny that it existed. And so after this huge clash, our two engines kept on evolving. The Shell's world of logic and data, it just got even more powerful, more complex. And the Heart's world of intuition and connection, now fully awake and totally energized, started beating with this new, powerful sense of urgency. But here's the crucial thing. A clash is not a conversation, and a fight is not a partnership. The two sides had finally met, but they hadn't actually connected. The Great Shell, our archive of all human knowledge, was still missing its purpose, its why. And the beautiful dream of the Heart, it was still missing a practical plan. It was missing its how. These two sides of ourselves, now fully aware of each other, just went back to their separate journeys. Like two relatives who don't know they're related, they continued on, not yet realizing they were two halves of the same mind, on a long, long road to finally coming home.